Hello, everyone. I would like to start my presentation with an acknowledgement that Concordia University is located in Tiohtiá, which is on unceded indigenous land claimed by the Kanien'kehá Nation. I would also like to thank my professor and the coordinator of the Loyola College for Diversity and Sustainability, Rebecca Titler, for the opportunity to present at the Sustainability Across Disciplines event. And now on to my actual presentation about the activities of the Canadian oil and gas company, Recon Africa, in and around the Okavango Delta, which is an incredible wetland that straddles the borders of Botswana, Namibia, Angola, and Zambia. So first, for a little bit of history, as you can see, the Okavango Delta is located in the top left of Botswana and is very close to the borders of the countries that I just mentioned. Indigenous peoples have been present in the Delta for over 100,000 years, as can be seen by the archaeological evidence. Here at the bottom, there's an image of the Tsodilo Hills, which is a 40,000-year-old rock art location, which is claimed by different groups in the region. Today, the Hambukushu, the Tseriku, Wayeyi, Bukakwe, and Anikwe are the most populous indigenous cultures in the region, and they mainly live off hunting, gathering, subsistence agriculture, and tourism. This region was ruled over by the Botswana, which is the main ethnic group in Botswana today, since the late 1700s. However, European colonization came in the late 1800s and split the Delta in two, with the Germans controlling Namibia until the First World War, while the British colonized Botswana until 1966. The geological history of the area is also quite interesting because the region is adjacent to a series of active fault lines, which is very significant when considering the implications of drilling for oil. These series of fault lines result in the Okavango Delta being slightly lower than all of the surrounding area, which is why most of the water ends up there. And it's situated in the middle of the Kalahari Desert. In 2014, the site gained the designation of being a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And this site includes multiple national parks across 3 different countries: Botswana, Namibia, and Angola. The entire watershed doesn't have, sadly, the same protections as the Delta itself, mostly because the 3 countries have conflicting national goals. This decision to make the site a UNESCO World Heritage Site guaranteed a stop to mining activities in the Delta and also imposed strict regulations on extractive projects that happened around a predetermined buffer zone. This designation resulted in a boost in biodiversity, which then contributed to making this region particularly popular for tourism, which participates greatly in the economies of the aforementioned indigenous peoples and also of the settlements that surround the area. So this region's importance for biodiversity really stems from it being a rare, extremely heterogeneous wetland which ends in the middle of the Kalahari Desert. So according to, during different seasons, the region is more or less wet, which completely reshapes the whole landscape. And that means that there are a lot of niches available for different species to occupy. So in the Delta, all 5 of the big game animals are present. So the lion, the leopard, the buffalo, the elephant, and the rhinoceros. And these species usually require a very large range, which is why they need a protected region as big as the Delta. There's also over 400 bird species, 71 fish species, and 1,068 plant species present in the Delta. And these plants are actually very important because they act as, they participate in the process of water retention in the Delta during the dry season. They also mitigate erosion. As you can see, in the Delta is composed of a bunch of different islands according to the wetness of the season. And the plants on the island really hold them together. If they weren't there, there wouldn't be anywhere for animals to live on, basically. Now on to Recon Africa, the villain of the story, if you want. So Recon Africa is a Canadian junior oil and gas company that's based in Victoria. Junior is a term that defines a smaller extractive multinational company that primarily conducts exploration rather than actual exploitation projects. But this is about to change for them because this project is massive. This has the potential to push them up into the major leagues, if you want. So on the map, as you can see, the areas in orange are those that are licensed for petroleum prospecting by Recon Africa. The dark green corner in the bottom right would be the actual protected World Heritage Site. The buffer zones would include all of the rivers that would eventually flow into the Okavango Delta. So the Quito River up here, Omatako River as well. And so technically extractive industries are strictly regulated in buffer zones surrounding that. The dark green areas would be other conservancies and protected sites. And I want to draw your attention to the top left corner, excuse me. So as you can see, this is where the first test drill was conducted by Recon Africa. And it's just barely within the Kapinga-Kamwalye Conservancy of Namibia, which is quite problematic. As a matter of fact, the leaders of this conservancy say that the company undertook drilling without the necessary permissions. The company denies these allegations and rather says that they are committed to the highest standards of corporate governance, which doesn't really mean anything. Yeah. So with these projects in general, the company has the reputation of using an act first and ask questions later approach, where land and water use permits are only secured after drilling has begun or after they get caught. So this is a very bad look for the rest of the project, obviously. The company has also been the target of a class action lawsuit through the SEC due to them making misleading claims about the amount of oil present under the delta, as well as the speed at which they could extract it. I think this is particularly worrisome because the added pressure of an investigation will make them accelerate extraction undoubtedly to please shareholders, basically. And so this runs the risk of having the whole environmental best practices that they advertise being ignored, corners being cut so that they can make that money and satisfy their investors. Ultimately, this project's impact on biodiversity in the Okavango Delta really stems from, it has the risk of being extremely destructive. And the risk really stems from its presence upstream of the UNESCO Conservancy. So notably, due to the general pollution that emanates from extractive industries, as well as, God forbid, a potential leak, would pollute the entirety of the delta because that's where all of the water in the region goes. This would end up poisoning the plants and animals that depend on the water in the delta, which really has the potential to destroy the whole balance, the whole fragile balance that has been struck in the delta. So now a little bit on the economic windfall of this project. So for locals, first of all, the Recon Africa company has undertook a series of corporate social responsibility initiatives. So presently, their initiatives stand at about 22 solar-powered water wells for different communities. So that's very meager. What's worse, jobs have been promised to local leaders by Recon Africa in exchange for their silence regarding concerns that they might have. And ultimately, jobs are a very big legitimizer for Recon Africa's presence in the region because they present themselves as a solution to the very real lack of job opportunities for locals. So far, however, they've only hired 44 people at this first test drill site. 29 of them are Namibian, and only 7 of them are actually from local villages. So this seems like a very meager solution to large-scale unemployment and is very exemplary of how extractive projects are conducted in the majority world. These projects depend on highly trained personnel and usually don't provide long-term employment to locals. This is informed fears from locals that they won't be seeing any economic benefits from this project. And what's even worse, local communities use the rich biodiversity in the Delta as the region's economic engine, whether that be revenue from tourism or subsistence from hunting and gathering. So a loss of biodiversity, which might happen due to the toxic emanations from the project, would signify a very significant drop in the quality of life for Okavango communities. So the Namibian government itself has portrayed this project as the next big step in Namibia's oil and gas industry. And they've said that these projects have the potential to bring economic prosperity to the whole state of Namibia, which is great on paper, but as past extractive activities undertaken by Western companies in the majority world have shown, the lack of clear regulations and efficient tax codes really risk promoting an unequal division of harms and profits, because most of the revenue will be channeled to the very top, to those who have decision-making powers, while local communities see maybe a few jobs, a few wells, and all the externalities of a toxic living environment. So this brings us to the only real winner in this situation, which is Recon Africa, which are Recon Africa and its investors. As you can see here, I have the stock history of Recon Africa. The first test drill was conducted around, I know it was in January of 2021. So where my cursor is, as you can see, their stock price actually rose 115% almost overnight after this first test. It then went down a little bit after the SEC investigation, but it's still very, very significantly higher than what you can see it was in 2019. So the fact that Recon Africa is a junior oil mining company that is sitting on what Petronews calls the largest oil play of the decade, that places the company at a crossroads where it has the potential to gain access to the prosperity that comes with being in the major leagues of resource extraction, in which they've already reaped massive benefits. Like no one in the region is going to see 115% increase in their net worth. Like, this is ridiculous. No oil has been extracted yet, which I find quite funny. So ultimately, I think that this project really runs the risk of ending up as another resource curse, wherein local populations never see the benefits of extraction, while Recon Africa gives peanuts to the elites of Botswana or Namibia, as compared to the incredible amount of wealth that it secures for itself, its investors, and through tax revenue, the Canadian state, so us, you know. Therefore, in this case, biodiversity is in accord with at the very least the economic survival of a region, but this will conflict with the economic prosperity of Recon Africa, its investors, and the ruling elite of the state of Namibia. So how do we resolve this conflict? Well, first of all, I don't resolve the conflict. This is not my conflict to resolve. As a Canadian whose comfort is incredibly dependent on oil extraction in ecologically fragile areas, I can't tell people that live in Botswana or Namibia to not drill for oil. Like, it's very true that oil can have economically beneficial impacts on society at large. However, that always comes at a very significant cost, but it's not my decision to call. However, considering that this company operates under the protection and regulations of the Canadian state, considering in its oil regimes that guide the conduct of extractive multinationals abroad. I think that we as Canadians can push the Canadian government to have some oversight on Recon Africa. Considering that the SEC is already investigating the company for financial crimes, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to petition our government to investigate potential ecological crimes. So if the Canadian government were to do so, Recon Africa's claims of going beyond regulatory compliance could be properly investigated, because at the moment, there's many sources that say different things. Certain local communities are saying this project is being conducted really well and we're implicated, blah, blah, blah. Others are being like, we're being bribed to not talk, right? So which one is, it's kind of hard from here. But if there was oversight from a body that has the potential of enacting strong sanctions or even completely stop Recon Africa's activities, such as the Canadian government, this could force the company to adopt behavior that might be more in line with their PR campaign. Right, so solutions for us Canadians: petition the Canadian government, which does not have a good history of regulating its extractive multinationals, especially in the mining and oil industries. But the more people know about this, obviously, the more the Canadian government is susceptible to hear people's concerns. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this brief asynchronous presentation. And I hope to see some of you eventually in person. Have a great day.